post 1947, as we all know, they took 2 years to draft this man-made document which we call as constitution, and a narrative being peddled that this is a sacrosanct document nobody can touch. It's something like a god-given, god-sent document, and we all know how many amendments it has gone through if it was so sacrosanct. Now, just look at how the document is made. It's completely made from a Western template of governance. And when you see those words which are being imposed on the Indian populace, socialist and secular, you already know that these were the words added under the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and the emergency regime that we saw. Now, when I say that Rahul Gandhi is trying to evoke this secessionist elements after doing a Bharat Jodo Yatra, which is very ironical. If he wanted to, unite something, he should have gone to Pakistan and Bangladesh to unite. Now, if you look at the very first article of the document, it says, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. So when Rahul Gandhi says that we are a union of states, it is officially written as the first article in the constitution. Now he gets to play with this tool to do the divide and rule thing, because unfortunately we are having no debate in the country regarding the constitution document. A lot of the problems that the present generations are facing, because the document is not in tune with the requirements of the modern world. Now you imagine the train which was given to us 1947 with this punctured engine called constitution. You cannot amend it unless you get some kind of a number strength in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, and plus the narrative and consensus that you need to build in the country. So when he says this, that we are a union of states, now something which I tweeted regarding the constitution, and particularly this first article, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. I say, why can't we replace it with something like Bharat, that is Bharatvarsh, shall be a union of Janapadas? Now, this concept of Janapadas is totally opposite to the Western template of what we call as states. Janapadas, which ancient India used to have around 1500 BC to 6th century BC, and we also used to have something termed as Mahajanapadas, 600 BC to 345 BC, where we define nation as where my people have their foothold at. It is not defined by any of the diversity or something that hints at division of people. It talks about wherever my people, my citizens are having their foothold, that particular piece of geography is what we call as the Bharat Kshetra. So Janapadas and Mahajanapadas, when you title your states with this kind of wordings, you in effect psychologically remove the divisionary mindset which some people or some anti-national or anti-social elements would carry. Now, which is exactly why I say that this particular document needs to be reviewed from scratch, because we are seeing, as I said, a lot of Western template of nation state concept. Now, United States, it said United States of America. So you already see a successionary element in the terminology. And it's not a surprise that most of the Western templates come from a victimhood mentality, and which is why many of the Americans still keep guns, because the thought process is that they would need to use the guns against the state for their own defense. That could be a possibility, which is exactly why they are being allowed with that relevant amendment in the constitution. So, this divisionary tactics are already in many of the Western templates governing document which we call as the Constitution. We need to revisit this, particularly because when we say the word Swarajya, we are talking about self governance. And when we say self governance, uh, we are talking about representing the voice of the natives, the citizens of the country. So we should not base any of our governance document or the operating templates for our institutions based on a borrowed template or a borrowed theology, which is why I say that the document, there has to be a debate at least should begin on how we are going to accommodate uh, the theories, the traditional values of this land, which is what we call as the Bharat Kshetra.
Makes a lot of sense. It's very interesting. As you said, you're trying to replace the words secular, socialist, democratic with the words sovereign, dharmic, familyist, humanist, republic. So, with this tweet, what you're trying to do is you're trying to open up a national debate on the relevance of a constitution that is a relic of a colonial past and maybe not so fit for purpose in a modern emerging Bharat that seeks to define itself by its own indigenous civilizational values. So I think that's a great idea, and I hope people take it up and it sparks off much more discussion around this topic.
So, Navita ji, when I say the words dharmic, familist, and humanist need to be added, replacing the words socialist, secular, and democratic. And I tell you why. Because dharmic value is what this Sanatan civilization is based on. We are not based on secularism. Now, secularism was a concept which came up in the West, particularly because the church and the mosques used to interfere with the state. Now, we never had this kind of a disturbance, or we never been victims to any of the Indian dharmas interfering in the governance. So we have to look at all the templates which come from a victimhood mentality from the West. And we need to reinvent and figure out how do we accommodate our values, which are primarily dharmic, which are primarily familist, that which believes in a family unit economic structure, and that which is humanist, because we do not want the imposition of the borrowed economic models of capitalism and communism going to a level where humanism is no more visible. So why don't we replace this word socialist, secular, and democratic with the words dharmic, familist, and humanist, which are sacrosanct ideas, which I don't think anybody would disagree on.
It's interesting because you say familist, and I wonder, is that a word you've just invented? Because I've never come across it before. It's a really good word. It's just I might be showing my ignorance, but I don't know. But it
It's
sums up what you're trying to say very well. That we want the family to be at the center of all decision making and governance.
it's particularly because we believe in life cycles. This particular piece of land, the geography, the civilization believes in life cycles, and life cycles is particularly about keeping family at the center of all your give and takes and the lifestyle that you have, which is why I say that the survival of the family is about the survival of the civilization and ultimately the nation, which is why familist has to be over there.
Hmm. So, on the topic of constitution, what do you make of the changes that the Supreme Court has just made to the process of election commissioner appointments? Can you explain the changes and why now, after all these years, and what could be the motivation behind this?
So one of the primary thing that we discussed is about how the Western template was imposed, and shockingly, the this particular document, Constitution, does not provide for the exact procedure for the appointment of the judges. So this judicial appointments is one problem that we are facing, and second one about the election commission, neither that process being adequately addressed in the document, which is very shocking. Both these two important pillars on which the modern democracy bases itself on, their appointment procedures are missing in terms of the details that it should have. Now, Supreme Court, from the looks of it, at this point in time, it seems that the CJI is very keen to take up powers in his hand, and he's clearly being saying that let's do my model of appointment of the election commission, CECs, and further, until and unless the parliament is able to come up with some appointment procedures clearly. And wherein this formula, he's talking about accommodating the leader of opposition and himself for the appointment of the chief election commissions and etc. In the election commission bodies.
Right.
So we are seeing an overarching role which the judiciary is now trying to take and clash with the government on, because of the missing pieces in the document.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because they're not elected institutions. So,
And as I said that these are Western template. This is the same thing which Netanyahu right now is facing in Israel. He's trying to make the same judicial appointment reforms. This is the same thing which President Trump faced during his regime in the United States, appointment of the Supreme Court judges. So it's missing everywhere. It's
right.
not just here because it's their template.
So you could be the first to bring this up and spark a big national discussion as to what the right process should be. I think you're right. It's very much needed.
Yep.
Um,
And when we say that we want the natives' voice to be represented, the dharmas to be represented in the document, and not have the cut, copy, paste of the Western template. A lot of confusion is because of the imposition of the English language. Now, if I can explain you some of the elements when I say religion is not dharma, the primary difference between religions and dharma is the belief that there is only one God, and the understanding that God is one. This is a primary difference between the two. Now, religion is a set of an organized system based on beliefs in a god or gods, and these systems often culminate into non acceptance of the existence of any other gods or dharmas. It goes further into the achievement of mob objectives, adversely being conversion and takeover, often with a blanket separation of treatment between believers and non believers. And this comes from the Adesh philosophy of strict commandments to define whether someone is a believer or not. On the contrary, Sanatan Dharma is all about individuals seeking for liberation. Now, the seeking is for the individual to decide based on his own interpretation and capacities. So the dharmas come from Upadesh philosophy of recommendations. And the four Indian dharmas are all encompassing, living, non living, and the entire universe. You can tell the dharma of water and that of fire. You cannot spell out their religions, can you? Now, look at the second element. I say temple is not a mandir. So, because temple is a place of worship, mandir is a place where you elevate your inner self. Now, the elevation of self entails several different methods and processes based on factors like which Bhagwan's Pran Pratishtha is done, representing which supreme values to be invoked, and what kind of allied economic and social objectives are achieved in the campus by the sampradayas of which school of thought. That's the kind of diversity in Dharma. Now, mandirs have been university campuses, centers for feeding prasad food to the people, centers of art, research, medicine, and so on. And the viharas between ancient mandirs, as I say, were student faculty exchange and research programs. Each mandir had different kinds of objectives based on the supreme values represented by which Bhagwan's Pran Pratishtha is done. So mandirs are clearly not temples. Now, look at the other element. Prayer and worship is not puja, it is not yagya, it is not anushthan, it is neither even arti. So the word prayer has its root origin in asking for material things, asking for forgiveness of sins, which is why you see many crimes are being discounted by misuse of some of the religious processes in Abrahamic religions worldwide. And there is empirical evidence to support these facts that some of the jailed criminals are adopting specific religions very fast on the basis of this psychological self rationalization of the crimes committed. Now, prayer can be done anywhere, in a temple, in front of a teacher, in a court of law, and so on. But that's not the case with puja, anushthan, yagya, or arti. These are completely different from prayer or worship. So, the Indian dharmas are about seeking spirituality and individual liberation, wherein one cannot be asking material things while seeking liberation. Now, for asking material things, we have a complete separate section where we are also talking about uh, bhagwans which are not just akara or sakara, but also nirakara, right? So, wherein there is no murti. So, this is how Sanatan Dharma is all encompassing. And for asking material stuff, you also have the concepts of what we call as Kula Devta and Kula Devi. Now, I really doubt if the Indian state has the capacity to even map the kind of diversities of different puja paddhatis and the sampradayas and the school of thoughts that we have in the Sanatan Dharma. So I think uh, the kind of Abrahamic dumbing down of words which has happened, which is why you see some of these legislations like Places of Worship Act being applied to the native dharmas. It's just mind boggling that none of these should actually apply to us. Now, look at the other element. God is not Bhagwan. There is no concept of God in Indian dharmas. Indian dharmas are about seeking the supreme values represented by the Bhagwan. And Indian Bhagwans aren't some forces who exist at some unknown place like gods of religions. Indian dharmas point out that the element of supreme is within each of us and everywhere. We do not come from the God follower concept of worship. So, just by being a follower, there is no miraculous force coming to rectify or forgive your doings in the Indian dharmas, which is why your karma are your accountabilities, and hence pious social behavior in this life for your least suffering in the next life cycles. So, religion is about believing in a God fearing life. Dharmas is about seeking a karma fearing life, which is why you see that this one life concept Abrahamic thought process would have reached a demonic proportion of consumption in the West and vanity. Whereas dharmas believe that we need to preserve the life cycles because we are going to come back to the same planet. So, religions believe in this concept of one life, whereas we are talking about life cycles based on our past and current karmas, the kind of life that we are going to have. Look at the other element. Idol is not murti. Idol can be of anyone, it can be put up anywhere. You can put up a poster or idol of a politician, a sportsman, a scientist, and so on. What we Indians do in the mandirs is not idol worship. Murti is completely different. Murti is an embodied physical representation of the Bhagwans for seeking and invoking the divine principle they represent. You are invoking those supreme values from within for your own seeking and elevation. So, I believe at this point, neither the state nor the legal framework has any capacity to map the diverse functions and value of the Indian dharmas. And this has resulted in a lot of litigation in the eyes of law at home and in the world. So I believe that it is our duty to make space for Indian dharmas in the constitution document and clearly designate the religions of foreign origin.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.